Okay, guys, we're going to get started. So I'd like to welcome you all tonight. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Amy Lee. I'm the Victorian State Manager at Ad Council Australia. And before Ad Council Australia, we were also the Comms Council, which you might know us by. Welcome tonight. Thanks for joining us. Firstly, I'd like to start by acknowledgement of country. Award acknowledges the traditional owners of the land with which we share and commit to leaving the land in a better place. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge their culture of storytelling through art, dance and music. I'm going to soon introduce you to the panelists you can see on your screen, and they've all given up their night tonight, so thank you. They are in lockdown, so there's nothing better to do, is there? Tonight's agenda is all about teaching you how to nail your application for award school. And that's the biggest challenge, is actually getting into award school. So tonight we're going to cover about award school. Session 1 is why apply? Session 2, what makes a great ad? Session 3, tackling the creative brief. Session 4, extra tips, tricks and ammo. And then we're going to do a live Q&A with all the panelists you see tonight. And we're going to use the Q&A chat box down the bottom. So if there's any questions that you think of throughout this, just list them there and then we'll come back to them at the end. And you can ask questions specifically to our panelist or just a general question about award school and we'll try and answer it. If we can't answer it tonight, we'll come back to you via email. So applications open in February. So we look forward to all applying. In the chat box, let us know why you want to apply for award school. What's your inspiration? Is it to change careers? Are you currently in hospitality and you want a new career change? Let us know why you're doing award school. So in summary, award school is a 12-week part-time course and the program is offered online or in person in your state. And the course is weekly lectures and in-person tutorials at creative agencies. And all the lecturers and tutors are industry leaders. So you're learning from the best in Australia. And we also tap into some international stars, which is great. So by the end of the program, you'll have a folio of work across a number of mediums. Having amazing ideas can lead you to some amazing careers in and outside the advertising industry. Ideas aren't just limited to our industry. This course can help you no matter what job stream you end up going in, whether it's PR, product development, production, media, small business, and the list goes on. As you can see from this alumni list, many people, including all our speakers tonight, and I should let you know that all the speakers tonight actually did award school back in the day, and we'll share some of the experiences as we go on tonight. They've had amazing careers off the back of completing award school. I mean, how good are some of these jobs? Key dates. So these are the key dates that you just need to know. So put them in your diary. We're having an information night, which will be sort of a supplement to tonight. And applications open the 10th of February and close the 24th of February. With the application, there is, and we're going to kind of go through this tonight, but there are 4 questions to the application. The first question is, why are you applying for award school? The second question is, find a boring ad and make it better. And then there are 2 briefs, similar to the practice briefs that you were given. You can see here, we've got course dates and then graduation night in August. So session 1, and I need to just introduce Kieran and Sarah. So Kieran.
Hello, how are you doing?
Kieran, when did you complete award school?
Well, truthfully, I did it twice. 2003 when I was in uni and very immature. So once I graduated, I gave it a second crack in 2006 and got a lot more out of it because I think I had a lot more to give it.
Can you share a favourite memory of doing award school, maybe 2006?
Yeah, 2006, favourite memory would be stenciling one of my ideas on some steps in the city at 1 o'clock in the morning and taking a photo of that and submitting it. You're not meant to actually make anything when you submit your work finally, it's meant to be just drawn. But I did that and it got on the wall. So that bit of extra effort to do something slightly illegal at 1 o'clock in the morning was, yeah, it's a fond memory.
And welcome, Sarah. Thanks for tonight. Sarah, what year did you complete award school?
I'm pretty sure it was 2006.
2006. And I'd just like to let you know that Kieran and Sarah are our Victorian school heads for award school this year. So we're really appreciative of their time tonight and for the next 12 months. Sarah, have you got a favourite memory from award school?
Look, I was trying to think about what my favourite memories were. I think a lot of it was meeting and talking with the lecturers, who are all people who worked in the industry, and they were all such different personalities. Some of them were really strong personalities, some of them were really eccentric, and some of them were just really funny, and it was great to spend time with them because it's really hard to get time with people who are at a certain level in their career. They're often really busy, and it was just a great way to get a sense of how their brains worked and what you needed to do to get into the industry and do well.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to pass it over to Sarah. So if you got next slide, please.
Oh, we're going to play a game, aren't we? Categories. My gosh. Has anyone played this recently? I certainly haven't. It's a really good way of getting your mind thinking beyond the first thought. I reckon if we were to play this game together, and we're going to now, we might all have very similar ideas for the first, for a board game that starts with a particular letter or an electronic gadget. But as we move past our first thought, we'll get to some more unique answers. So what I'd love to do is go to the next slide. And no Googling, no cheating, please. Well, we're going to start with the letter S. And just take a minute to write down as many things or games starting with S, electronic gadgets starting with S, and board games starting with S. And then once we get to the point of everyone having had a bit of a think, we'll start putting it in the chats. Dun, 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 dun.
So if you've got a piece of paper there or your phone, just type them in there at the moment. And then what we'll do is we'll share them in a second.
Starting with S. Fortnite. No, I'm joking, it's fine. Monopoly is definitely Kieran. Electronic gadgets, think of things that start with an S. Sandwich press, see, it's a good one. And then maybe some board games. already had a lot of Scrabbles and a lot of Snakes and Ladders, which are classics. Very good. Twister. All right, Ames, what do you reckon?
All right, thanks everyone. Sarah's just making the point there that, you know, you really have to, you know, move past your first thought to get something unique. And it's the same with creative ideas. All right, we'll go to the next slide. So as I mentioned in the agenda, question 1, and you're going to be asked this, so you can start thinking about your application for next year. Why are you applying for this course? And I asked you to put in your chat, why are you applying for this course? But what we want to do is we want to see this as a creative answer. And so I'm going to pass it over to Kieran to talk you through how that could look.
Thanks, Amy. So effectively, question 1 is almost like brief 0, if you will. This is, you know, the first like creative challenge that, you know, or, you know, one of the major creative challenges to get into award school. So you need to treat this like an idea. It's probably like the most, you know, it should be like a really creative job application in a way. So if I was doing this theoretically, maybe one of the thoughts that might drive my approach is that I can use creativity to change the world. So perhaps an idea of that is, well, I can build a future where people and chimpanzees live peacefully together. But then you like think for a second, that's not really a very useful idea at all. So let's scrap that and go on to another one. So idea 2, my creative achievements will be remembered forever. I'll be able to have like a really great impact through advertising. Cool, okay, let's see where that goes. So I'll start scamping, start trying to translate that, you know, idea in my head into something physical, something that is real. I'll start with a box. It's always great to be able to, you know, even though you shouldn't give any borders to your thinking, it's great to be able to encapsulate an idea in some borders. And first of all, we really want to be able to show an idea, you know, and allow the viewer to take it in rather than like say what it is. So here it's, an individual, which is a theoretical me that doesn't exist, saying that time might label me as the greatest creative of our time. But maybe that's a bit too like, you know, literal. So maybe we go a bit lateral with it and put my head in a jar to be preserved as, you know, one of the greatest creative minds of the 21st century. And do I need to give it a tagline, you know, explain a bit more? Okay, well, you know, my ideas will live forever. Perhaps that's the tagline for my submission. But, you know, it's probably a bit punny, that idea of living forever with a preserved head, you know, like there's already a bit of a twist in the visual. So maybe you don't need to twist the line. Maybe it's enough just to simplify that previous slide. And then, you want to be able to draw it a bit better, you know, add some embellishments, find out what you can add to bring it to life, some bubbles in the water, perhaps my head's still alive, you know. But, you know, you can simplify it as well. Like there's a lot going on here, I've probably drawn too much. So strip back those unnecessary elements and just really work out what you need there for the idea to work. Once you've done that, let it breathe. You know, shrink things down a bit, give it the space. You know, you want to present something compelling to the viewer that they're drawn in to look at and soak up, rather than like filling every bit of space that you have there. Yeah, and now we have some past student answers to question 1. Why am I applying for this course? I'd like to come up with better ideas and learn how to play basketball. And you will use a lot of paper, which is most of it's recycled to start with, so that's all right. Or there's a creative under this suit who wants to fly free. You might need to trick your eyes a little bit to work this one out. But if you can tilt your screen, it'll say to see things from a new perspective. So yeah, challenging the viewer on this one. And, you know, a little bit of meme culture is not always bad. So you got someone with their MyGov job, pineapple pizza, you know, a bit of fresh thinking, watching Gruen, and then award school to blow your mind. Or perhaps a cake that's not quite not quite baked, a little bit undercooked. Probably needs another 12 weeks to turn into a great idea cake.
Thanks, Kieran. So now we're going to go on to session 2, what makes a great ad? And I'd like to introduce Phoebe Sloan and Matt Bladen from Special Group in Melbourne. Phoebe, in fact, won as the #1 Victorian student in 2018, which is just an enormous effort. So well done, Phoebe, for that. And Matt, he did Awards School in 2017 and is also the co-chair of Youngbloods. And I'd like to just ask Matt for 1 minute, can you tell us about the Youngbloods? What is the Youngbloods and how do we get involved in the Youngbloods?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Amy. So Youngbloods it's a national organisation, which is basically a network and a resource for young people starting out in the industry, sort of typically under 30 years old or in the first few years of their career. And we have a chapter in every state. So if anyone wants to get interested, or anyone is interested or wants to get involved, they can sort of look us up on Instagram or any sort of Facebook group like Youngbloods Victoria or Youngbloods New South Wales. And we throw events and we sort of run workshops and have sort of networking events and stuff throughout the year. So it's a really great way to sort of get into the industry and sort of get to meet people.
Yeah, they're really fun. Matt and I actually met at a Youngbloods event many moons ago. I had just finished Awards School and we had a few drinks together and had a chat. And then, yeah, Matt was like, do you want to come work with me at the end of it? So I highly recommend going to a Youngbloods event. They're a lot of fun. You get to meet some awesome people.
And so we can find out about future events through website, Facebook.
Yeah, we're on all the socials on the website. Yeah, basically give us a follow. And there's really good Facebook groups actually sort of popping up in Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria, which is a bit more of a community space, which we're growing at the moment, which is good.
Great. And that website link for anybody who's not familiar with it?
That's youngbloods.org.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, next slide. So as I mentioned, question 2 is find a boring magazine ad, billboard or poster and make it better. So you guys can start working on this question too. So start pulling out ads, take photos of billboards that you think, I can make that better. And so Matt and Phoebe tonight are going to share with you what makes a great ad. All right, pass it over to you guys. Thanks so much.
Awesome, thanks. I mean, you've pretty much done this first slide for us, but yeah, as you said, we're Matt and Phoebe. We're a creative team at Special Group, and we moved over there at the start of the year. We've been a team for about 3 years since we shared a beer in a pub, as Phoebe said. And I'm the art director, and Phoebe's the copywriter.
Amy's asked us tonight to kind of explain, I guess, what makes a great ad. And I guess like most kind of advertising folk do, we froth a good analogy. So we thought we'd kind of come up with one that hopefully is memorable and fun. And it's something that hopefully give you guys some food for thought. So we believe a great ad is like a KFC Zinger box. And I guess while we don't know the exact 7 secret herbs and spices, here's our best guess, the ingredients that we think make up great ads.
Cool. So over the next few slides, we're going to break down the Zinger box and we're going to draw the comparisons as to why all its wonderful components could also be the components of a wonderful ad. And it makes a lot of sense, obviously, to start with the cornerstone of the Zinger box, the original recipe piece. And of course, a great ad also has an original recipe. But original recipe can sort of mean many things. It can mean untapped insight, or it can be a new execution that hasn't been done before. Obviously, sort of advertising feeds and thrives off culture and media. So the good thing in that sense is that it's always evolving. But often the very best original recipes are, a fresh perspective on something that everyone's already familiar with that makes you sort of look at it and realize how stupidly obvious it was the whole time.
Now, this whole presentation won't be fully endorsed by KFC. We will have some other examples, but coincidentally, KFC also have some great ads, and we've sort of selected, I guess, a few of the best just to show even how a single brand can do so many great ads in so many different ways. So if you haven't seen these guys already, this set of print ads already, I highly recommend you look these up. They've got some really simple, very original, but kind of very obvious kind of executions to them, where you can see that sort of flame grilled and that fiery chicken coming out of, rockets, cars and alike. So definitely give these a look up. And then we've also got some non-KFC examples to share with you guys. And I'm sure this presentation will get shared around at the end where you can have a look for yourselves. But we find the Palau Pledge was a great piece of original work because it really turned a stamp in a passport into kind of an environmental promise to protect the country. And then we've also got an example here with Fortnite Travis Scott as well, which is kind of completely new sort of virtual concept that just hadn't been done before. We also think a great ad is fresh, or in our case, fried fresh. And some great ads are very relevant to kind of right now, like what's happening sort of in the cultural zeitgeist. And it's the nature of its sort of greatness lies in it feeling really current. It could be part of a trend, maybe it's part of a moment in culture, or maybe that's something that's happening in the news. It could also be a really clever way of solving a crisis.
So this KFC ad is obviously very famous now it's come out in the last couple of years. And what was so awesome about it was that it didn't actually come from a brief. It came from a crisis that arose in the UK where KFC had run out of chicken. So rather than sort of shy away from the problem and sort of try and bury it, they leant into it. And in about 24 hours, turned around one of the greatest print ads of the last sort of few years. And we can see, lots of brands, responding really quickly and really well to cultural moments that are taking off. So a lot of you might have seen this one from the recent Super Bowl, where Reddit, who'd been in the news all week because a Reddit community had basically almost crashed the US stock market, took out something like a 5-second spot on the Super Bowl to run this ad, which, was designed for people to go back and pause when they sort of looked at it later. Or we recently saw a great campaign for the New Zealand election, getting New Zealanders who are overseas to vote by sort of saying if they don't vote, they're going to leave themselves open to the Russian meddling. And they had a lot of fun with that as well. So which leads us to my next point. A great ad is not afraid to be spicy. So don't play it safe. There's a lot of power in advertising from its ability to stand up and say something that's brave, controversial, or unexpected. The good thing about advertising, obviously, it gets past a lot of people's sort of barriers and walls that they put up. So you can sort of sneak through the keeper a little bit and say something that is really brave. But you can do this in a lot of different ways. So you can do it by having a lot of fun, being funny, or being really meaningful, or really sort of straight up and quite bold. So it's quite a zinger.
KFC again, sort of, they actually stepped up after that iconic FCK ad, and they dropped the C-bomb, and they actually came out and talked about where their chicken had come from. So a really kind of brave thing that probably most brands would shy away from, but they actually really brought it to the forefront, and it really, really helped sort of their case to explain where their chicken comes from. But a great kind of lateral tactic to kind of go, no, like we're owning this. In a really kind of interesting, copy-heavy, entertaining way. And some other ads that were really brave in recent times, look up Libresse, Viva la Vulva. This sort of campaign is really famous. It really tackles the taboo of sort of women's genitalia and vaginas by kind of really celebrating it with talking ones. I'm sure most of you have seen the Nike Dream Crazy spot with Colin Kaepernick, where Nike as a brand took a stand alongside him as well. So just really, don't be afraid to kind of, I guess, use your perspectives and your opinions and express yourself during the course as well, because sometimes those really interesting kind of meaningful ideas as well can shine through. And also too, I think Kieran mentioned it before, a great ad is also inherently simple. In our case, it's a simple pleasure. So, kind of like the glorious licking out of that last bit of potato and gravy, a great ad feels really pure. They generally have one message and they're showing and saying it really, really well. So sometimes all it needs is just a logo to make the viewer kind of join the dots. So that kind of, I guess, that reductionism Kieran was talking about earlier about, does this need all this stuff in the background? Does just the purity of this insight just shine through here? And we love these examples of these sort of magic ice age or happy feet kind of style birds, with the steam coming out of their beaks. And oh, sorry, Matt, you go.
No problems. I mean, sometimes you don't even need the logo, right? Like, this is an absolute all-time classic on the left-hand side here. It's obviously a Kit Kat ad, a brand that set itself up to be so iconic that, the joke is obviously you don't even need to finish the ad for people to know exactly what you're talking about. Or another really famous piece of work on the right-hand side there from Durex, tapping into a great cultural moment around Father's Day, and sort of hinting that, their customers don't celebrate the day.
Yeah, that Durex ad's great, where if you find an insight and you think it's really, really unusual and really different, don't be afraid to even write it out. Sometimes it's as, as profound as sort of drawing it up. We also believe a great ad can take on kind of unexpected forms. So really think about, if you are creating sort of an ad that isn't necessarily print or TV, and you kind of have the creative freedom to experiment where your ad is going. A great ad can exist beyond kind of the parameters of traditional formats. That could be experiences, that can be products, even movies. And that's like the really fun part about our job now is, we can sort of play and be creative in all these awesome areas. KFC had a great example. They had finger licking good nail polish, which is sort of really hilarious. And it takes their kind of tagline to a really literal context and also celebrates their brand in a really kind of fun and refreshing way. We've also got, as other examples, we've got Christ the Redeemer balloon, sports bet. This was kind of a really epic 46-meter balloon stunt to promote betting on the World Cup in Rio. And we've got also that very famous advertising example called Fearless Girl. Look her up as well. Just a really interesting and contextual move to kind of place this sculpture, in the heart of New York there to kind of speak about gender equality, in the workplace. And, these briefs are, some of the best briefs you'll ever receive, including the application ones. So, have that blue sky thinking and don't be afraid to kind of, I guess, dream really big or think really big beyond kind of traditional ads.
And finally, a great ad can be so bad that it's good. So there's ads that are really ridiculously stupid that they sort of stick in your brain for days to come. Normally if something's dumb, that's a good reason why you can't shake it. So they can be, really memorable, surprising, fun, and humorous. And often the dumber they are, the more people want to engage with them. So a really good example from KFC again is the fried chicken bath bombs. I mean, you don't really have to say more than that. Sort of understand why that was a hit.
I really want one of these.
And we can see that, from lots of other brands as well. There's a great campaign that came out recently called Better Safe Than Syphy, from this awesome insight that most people think syphilis is like an STI that died out hundreds of years ago. So they tapped into sort of all that imagery and language, and sort of, positioned it towards millennials and Gen Zs who are actually seeing a rise in syphilis cases. Or another really awesome spot, which you should definitely check out, is the RC Cola family ad. I guess that GIF just probably does enough of the speaking there.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Phoebe.
No. So I guess we hope that when you need a reminder of kind of what makes an ad great, that hopefully you'll think of this sort of KFC Zinger box interpretation that we've kind of thought of. And so if you guys have any questions or anything like that, please hit us up, add us on LinkedIn. I'm Phoebe Sloan, Matt's surname's Matt Bladen, so add us on LinkedIn. And good luck with it all. We were in the same room that you guys were in, and we can't wait to see what all the wonderful ideas that you guys are going to come up with. And we're really excited to see what you bring to this industry.
Thanks, Phoebe. Before you go, and we're going to ask you some questions at the end, so these guys are going to hang around. So put your questions in the Q&A box. I am going to ask Phoebe one question. What was your highlight of award school in 2018?
Oh, I loved my time. I'd probably say the shoots for me were probably where I had the most fun. I had a really interesting class. I had a guy from France. I had a chef. I had a lawyer. There were some really kind of interesting people in my group, and every week there was just some really hilarious, funny, interesting ideas, and we all kind of supported each other through it. And I'm still really good friends with two of them in my tute all these years later. And yeah, definitely say the tute. And my tutors I'm still really close with too. So it's a really communal, you're all thrown in the deep end together, and it's a really unique experience. So yeah, highly recommend it.
And Matt, can you share a highlight from your time in 2017?
I think the grad night. was probably the end of it was probably really, really good.
The party.
Yeah. Get this awesome sort of big sort of feeling of, a weight off your shoulders, a massive sense of accomplishment. And then obviously you get to sort of meet all the creative directors and ECDs who have come to the grad night to sort of check out your work and finally sort of take your first steps into the industry. It felt like, the start of an exciting next chapter.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, guys. And we'd love you to hang around for some questions at the end. So session 3 is tackling the creative brief. And we gave those that registered early a chance to have a crack at a practice brief. And we also shared the brief yesterday to all of you, so you could have a go in your own time. And I know a few people did have a go yesterday. Both Lucy and I received some briefs. So I'd like to introduce Steve and John, who have recently joined Ogilvy Melbourne and both completed award school, Steve in 2012 and John in 2015. Thank you so much for giving up your time tonight and also going through all of the work that was submitted. We had nearly 100 pieces of work that came through having a crack at this brief, which is just awesome. So well done to everybody. And these guys are going to take you through some of the thinking and recommendations and feedback. Don't worry, there's no names used. It's just general comments. So I'm going to pass it over to the guys, but I'm just going to start with John.
Yes.
Can you share a highlight with us from your time doing awards school?
I mean, look, award school generally was really great. I enjoyed all of it because it sort of exposed this industry that I wanted to be part of. But there was one of the shoots that we went to, which was run by Ellie Bullen and James, I forget his last name, but they now own or run Sick Dog Wolfman Agency. But the whole shoot was in one of the Japanese karaoke bars in the city, and it was all designed to basically get you out of your comfort zone, which is, you have to do in advertising to kind of think creatively anyway. So I thought that was a really good kind of example of advertising and something a little bit different, which I really enjoyed.
That's great. And Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Amy.
Could you share a favorite memory from award school or an experience?
I think probably it would have been, it's the first kind of time you rock up to your first shoot after the lecture, which is, the lecture's all exciting and you sort of see all these people you've never kind of seen before and you're all sort of buzzing with excitement. Then all of a sudden it's actually the shoot time, which is like the actual nitty-gritty working section of it. And just sort of sitting there in that sort of lobby of a cool advertising agency, and you were like, it was like you actually go, well, this is the moment sort of all clicked for me that I was like, okay, I think I found what I want to do now. And that was, it's because it's a bit of a convoluted path to advertising a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's right. So these guys are going to go through some feedback. So just to let you all know that when the application comes out, there'll be 2 briefs that you'll need to have a crack at in a similar capacity to this, and you'll have 2 weeks to provide a response in your application. And so we're just going to use these practice briefs as an example of what you need to do in the application process. So off you go. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time tonight.
No worries. Do you want to go through the brief? Do you want me to? We're gonna keep it pretty casual tonight, guys. We're sort of we talked about, I guess, chatting through it the same way we would talk about an idea at work, which is, just like a general conversation. It keeps everything loose and free. And but just to go over the idea that you guys, I guess not all of you applied for the brief. So just so everyone's on the same page when we're going through the ideas, the client was the Australian government. The product that we were selling, that you guys were selling, was physical exercise in a poster format, and trying to get people aged 30 to 60 to do that physical exercise. So the single-minded prop, that thing that you wanted to communicate, was physical activity is the key to a fulfilling life. And then there was some support and background stuff, which some people pulled from as well to pull into their idea.
So for this, John and I really thought, how are we going to help you guys get the most out of this? So we're going to really get amongst the weeds here and start with the basics, which is the sacred rules of tackling any creative brief.
Now, you can't do any bit of advertising, whether it's a small social post to a global TVC, without having a solid insight, idea, and execution.
So think of it this way, right? A great ad is like a building, a beautiful shiny monument, something that's going to stand the test of time. But before you start building, you need the right materials, which is insight, idea, execution.
So the foundation, your insight, needs to be really, really strong to ensure that the idea doesn't fall over. And as Phoebe and Matt mentioned, it's something that needs to feel true. It needs to, give the rest of your idea a reason to exist.
Then you've got the idea, which is like the building blocks, the solid core of any ad. And that's the way that you arrange the insight in an interesting way.
And then the execution is sort of like the facade. So it's how you put all those pieces together to finish the building. So, think in terms of your headlines, your graphics, any kind of visual collisions, or if it's a long form copy ad, it's how you kind of want to express all those parts to make it interesting and relatable and stop people in their tracks to take to get their attention to look at your ad.
And of course, you can have the best laid plans, but if one or more of these pieces are missing, or not working properly, you might end up with something like this. And believe me, they've all been there.
And so now we're going to be your Tim the Toolman and do a building inspection of your submissions. So the way we've kind of structured it, just to help you along, we felt like it would be best to go over the ones that were working well first. And then we're going to go over ones that, we're highlighting things to watch out for and things to improve along the way, just because if you see the stuff that's working, it'll be easier for you to see the stuff that's not working afterwards. But yeah, you'll see.
And this is like a big, glaring disclaimer. This is not about hurting anyone's feelings. If you do end up in advertising, that's what clients are for, believe me. This is about giving everyone something useful they can take away as you apply for award school. Because really, it's just about, you just got to get in. Once you're in, you can go from there.
And look, no one 100% nailed the brief. So there were things to improve on. Everyone's at different levels, but that's okay. It's not about calling anyone out on what they've done badly. These are just examples to hopefully give you some advice. It helps you get into award school. Okay, so let's start. Building blocks, right? Good insight. These ads that we found in the submissions had a strong human truth or insight at their foundation. And obviously on the right, you've got, Snickers, right? You aren't you when you're hungry. It's an iconic line, but it's also based on a really solid, truthful insight. You just, you get hangry. So, that's just rolled out over the years. So let's look at some that had good insights. So this first one we liked, if you can, the headline's personal best, and then the copy underneath says the exercise you do is best for you. So building on that insight that, you can do the exercise that suits you and your lifestyle. You don't have to do something that sort of sits outside of that. So we thought, that was built on a good solid ad. We liked the line. The line was nice and concise and related well to the insight. So it was just a good, well-rounded example of an ad. So it ticked a lot of boxes for us. Second one, funny insight. You just don't, as a dad, you say you don't want your kid to beat you in a competition. Really, really simple. Makes you kind of smile because you're not alone and go, oh yeah, that is true. You wouldn't want your kid to beat you. So time to get moving. It's good. So this one was it was pretty funny. So the insight says almost a third of Australians aren't getting enough exercise because it's daunting to find a block of 30 minutes of movement when you're always on the go. The idea was taking that insight and presenting it in sort of a palatable way for people. So giving them tips saying, divide and conquer the big suggested 30 minutes by pumping that movement out for 30 seconds with 30 reps over the course of the day. Then the execution, you can obviously see a poster that's sitting in a cubicle there. So it's contextually relevant to the message that they're trying to say, which makes it really powerful. And it's pretty funny as well. So pop a couple more squats. You've already got up from your desk, so you might as well. So yeah, it was it was good. We had a laugh at this one. Yes. Again, another simple insight, don't sit and wait. Next tram stop is 5 minutes, 5-minute walk away. This one, I think, there's lots of different ways. Maybe you could jazz it up a bit, but at its core, it totally works. And then the last one for the group of insights. So how do you get your 30? So they've they've listed all these different ways you can do exercise within the big 30. So highlighting this again, it's the same kind of insight as the personal best one. It's like you can do the exercise that suits you. So asking people, prompting them how you get your 30. And we like this one as well because it was a copy-led one. There weren't I think this was the only copy-led one, wasn't it, Steve?
Yeah, pretty much. Like there was like not many long form kind of copy ads, which is hard to do. And believe me, they very rarely come up in the real world anyway. So don't worry. All right. So strong visual. These ideas were really strong visual ideas, unexpected things, analogies, collisions, all good stuff. And obviously, you've got a good example on the right there of another. I mean, Guinness do iconic print. They do iconic advertising, full stop, really.
So this was a great one. So, taking something negative in relation to sort of fitness and exercise and flipping it on its head to turn it into something positive. So the yoga mats replace the ciggies, inhale until your heart's content. It's just it came from a good insight as well. So it's one of those ads with an image that captures your attention straight away, which has already been mentioned previously, and it was quite reduced as well. So, good job.
These ones, we just thought these had a sort of charming feel about them as well. And again, it's just an arresting image, taking, our sort of organs and literally getting them moving. There's not much more to say than that. It just works, really, doesn't it?
This one sort of using a good visual analogy, that analogy of a beached whale. And, again, it's quite arresting. You don't often see a whale on a beach, and prompting people not to be like the beach whale. So you kind of, it's a great example of an analogy that you just get straight away. So it's, again, what Matt and Phoebe said, you have something like this that gets people to pull their guard down for a moment so you can communicate a message simply.
And this one we included because we thought visually it's really awesome, and I think there's a truth to it, which is that there is exercise can be more fun, and if this one would just probably benefit from a little bit more refining of the headline, but as a visual, it's arresting. I mean, what did you think, John? Was there anything you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, like, I think we discussed earlier, but like you could even roll with not even a headline. You could just run a subhead on this, and it'd, following that idea of reductionism and just reducing it down because the visual is so strong.
That's right. Yeah.
So these next ones were all really nice lines. So a good headline, as everyone knows, captures your attention right away. And we felt these did that. So a good example of a good Durex ad, Luke, I am not your father. There's a couple of good ones in this series.
So this one, really, really simple. Play on words, so that double entendre, get back with your ex, exercise calling. Again, it works because it's concise. It has that little sort of smile of the mind moment where you put two and two together and you get the payoff. So good work.
Again, a really strong line. So, keep your health on track. It's, it conjures up images of running, and you've got the person there with their little home to supermarket thing. I think, with this one, potentially the image could have worked a little bit harder, but again, the line's strong. So good stuff.
And the same again. The idea here is solid, and the lines are very, it's got that sort of alliteration, a sitcom for a quick run, a Candy Crush for an endorphin rush, doom scroll for a night stroll. That's the one that made us include it. That was quite funny. Binge watch for a stopwatch. So it's fun. It gets the idea across, and it's copy-led. So I think perhaps these could probably be expressed in a more interesting way, perhaps with a visual, or who knows, maybe it's just one of them. But we think that it's a good example of being like, okay, this is what you want to take, and this is where you want to get to with exercise.
There's a campaign in this one, isn't there?
Sorry?
There's a campaign in this one. You could easily
absolutely
turn each of these into an execution or a radio ad or a print ad.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
there was so much potential there.
We love anything that rhymes. And so now we've covered, a group of, like a selection of ads that we liked, and there was lots of things working in those ads. And now we're going to go over some of the ads that potentially had some things that needed improvement. And there were some good parts in some of the ads, but we're just going to point out the things that we think could be worked on. Just so, when you're creating your own ads, hopefully you get to the point where you finished it and you can assess it and be like, okay, what's working, what's not working, and how could I improve it to make it better?
And this is what happens when you're with a creative director too. In your agency, you'll have feedback on your ideas, and you develop a bit of a thicker skin about receiving feedback and learn that it's not about you, it's about the work. So that's Absolutely. A good perspective to have on all this as well.
That's
thank you for making that point. Yeah, we are not trying to have a go at anyone here. It's just like we want you guys to get into awards.
This is how everyone improves and everyone gets feedback, and you take it on board and you apply it to your work with the knowledge that it's not about it's not a critique on you, but it's a way of improving your work.
Absolutely.
Okay, so these ones were on the right track, but there was just a little something missing.
So this first one, looking at this ad, the visual was kind of interesting. It's quite reduced in terms of the information that's there. I mean, when we were first looking at it, it's got people doing exercise, but when you look at the line, it's sort of like relive your junior moments with them. Feels like it's maybe pushing, maybe it's an ad for spending more time with your kids or something like that. So we've just, on the next slide, we've just done a quick tweak. It's not perfect, but it just gives you an example of how you can change something like a headline or a subhead to provide a little bit more information and context for what the message that you're trying to communicate, to really shift it for something that doesn't really make sense for the brief to something that does make sense from the brief. So don't act your age, just 30 minutes of exercise a day can keep you feeling younger.
So this is a good example of look, everyone does it at this stage. The old showing a positive and then showing a negative in the same thing. Don't need to do it. The idea is solid. It's like there's better ways to get your heart rate up. If you just go to the next slide, really all you need is the logo down the bottom, and 30 minutes of exercise is all you need, or whatever your line might be, and that's it. You don't need the other side. So it's about reducing.
So this one, we really like the line. Like, it's a really nice sentiment, this idea that life is better when your body's moving, and it speaks really well to the brief. It's just we found the visual a little bit confusing. I think what it's saying is it's traffic lights and it's an image at the top, and when you're stopped, you're kind of sad and moping, but when you're going, you're happy and free. But it's kind of confusing, and I think with a stronger visual, you could make it into a good ad. But yeah, it's those are the things you need to watch out for when you're coming up with work.
And then again, this is a totally technically correct ad. It's just perhaps think of a way that we could reduce it so it's a little bit more simplified, so it sort of feels like an easier get, because there's possibly a little bit too much storytelling going on there at the moment.
And same. So a good idea is a good idea, but there's going to be a lot of people applying for award school, and there's going to be a lot of the same ideas as with that exercise we did when we first started, of everyone typing their answers of video games and electronic devices in the chat. You can see that a lot of people are coming up with the same things, and if you come up with the same ads in award school, trying to get into award school, then they're not going to be as strong, and they're not going to be considered as good as if they were unique in their approach. So if it feels like someone else might have it, or you're relying on, things like cliched kind of sayings or ways of doing things within a particular industry, keep thinking, because you don't want to have the same idea as somebody else.
So, look, we've got two groups of pairings here. There's nothing wrong with them. They're good ads, but when we were going through the submissions, there were a lot of stuff to do with keys. So nothing wrong with this, but it just came up a lot. So it's one of those things you got to go, if it's one of a first thought, and it's like the guys touched on initially, just keep pushing, keep thinking, keep going. If someone else has got, if that was my first idea, what else can I do? Because chances are someone's going to have it.
And you
that's
can,
the same, the next one as well, isn't it, Pence?
and you can literally like keep coming up with ideas forever. There's no like, each time you go back to it, you'll come up with something new. Like we've worked on briefs for like 3 weeks or something, and you never stop running out of ideas. You just, you know, you keep pushing, you'll come up with something more original and better and better. So again, this was like another trope that was quite common with all the applications. So this idea of like hearts pumping, and you know, it's relevant to this idea of exercise, but you know, it's just something that was repeated again and again. So you can see there, you know, they're pretty similar ads.
So these ones, relying on visuals without a stronger idea will only get you so far. So these are some stunning drawings, let me tell you. But as John and I went through them, unfortunately, it's like a sort of like a beach ball. There's like it's pretty, but there's not much sort of depth to it. And really, to get a really killer idea, you need to have that insight to build up from.
So I mean, we can go through this pretty quick, but you know, this is, whoever's done this is a really, really talented artist. Like it's really super beautiful, but it's, you know, you got to think about what you're drawing and what message you're crafting in terms of how you present your visuals. And, you know, you've always got to come back to the insight, idea, and execution. It's like, is your execution based on a really solid insight? Because if it's not, if you've just sort of like, I guess, come up with an execution before you and you skip those couple of stages, then quite often what you end up with is an idea or an ad that sort of lacks a little bit of substance and a little bit of meaning, and it doesn't ring as true, or it won't be kind of impactful as something that comes from a really true insight.
Yeah, I mean, we can move through these relatively quickly, but I mean, again, gorgeous drawing, you know, obviously some very talented people here. You know, again, cool, but it just doesn't kind of, it just doesn't land that sort of next step down. And you see it, you go, oh, that's nice, but then you go, well, what's it really saying? And this one was borderline, but even then, it just didn't quite have enough of that sort of human truth to sort of land it into a really good quality ad. And obviously, John, you might want to speak to this one. We debated about this. We thought it was, we saw it and we're like, oh, that looks really, really cool. But, you know, it just felt like there was something missing there as well.
Well, yeah, we sort of debated for it. Was like, what's it saying? And it's like, you know, at its core, there's not enough substance to communicate the message. I mean, it's a great, if it was saying the right thing, and it's a great example of, you know, reductionism and having a simple visual to tell a story, but it's not saying enough to communicate the message properly. I mean, if you, like it's saying cycling gets your heart rate up, but it needs to kind of say more to be effective.
Literally, these present the message in a very, very literal way, and it can come across a bit flat. So just think about that as you know, what's the most exciting way you can do this? So yeah. Yeah,
so this was pretty literal. It's literally just showing the person enjoying their 30 minutes. I mean, there's something in it, and I mean, it feels more like a social ad, to be honest, but
well, it feels like something a client would actually go with. Like it's actually a real ad. Yeah. But yeah, again, you know, look, technically correct, but it's just it doesn't leave that little part of that, you know, moment of where you click and go, oh, I get it. That's hilarious. Or I wasn't expecting that, or whatever. It's presented very, very obviously.
And I think as well, you got to remember with all these ads, or any ad really, you're interrupting somebody's life and you're expecting them to spend some time with your ad and then go buy something. So like, make it entertaining, make it, you know, move them emotionally, you know, drive it. Like you need to make them feel something, or to actually, like, I don't know, consider it or think about it or do something as a result of your ad. So, you know, move you away for 30 each day. It's kind of like it's a nice line, but it's just the visual is kind of a little bit flat, a little bit literal. It could be a little bit more exciting to, you know, make the ad work harder.
Longbows, which is borrowed interest, niche analogies, however tempting, really translate into a good ad. So at this stage of your journey, make sure with your submission, you ask yourself, would your nan and pop get it? If no, just keep going.
So all these ads rely on someone knowing something. And this ad was a little confusing in itself, but it's the cover of Abbey Road by the Beatles, without the actual Beatles in there. And so
which is it's like a cool thought. Like, it's cool,
yeah.
but how does it sort of tie to the prop,
Well, yeah, exactly. And you're relying on people knowing this album cover as well, but it was, the message was a little bit convoluted.
Again, you've got Super Mario. Obviously, it will appeal to some people, and some people will get it. But it relies on borrowed interest, which is borrowed interest means taking something street cred and just like jamming it into your ad and hoping to sort of plaster over the shortcomings. Really.
Yeah, I think if you're going to use borrowed interest, it should be like a little bit of extra sprinkling to make it spicier, as opposed to creating the whole ad from it. And then this one, using Michael Jackson and moonwalking to encourage people to, to improve their health. I mean, it just felt like a little bit of a stretch for the brief.
And again, we've got something that's beautifully drawn, and it's if the I think this is a Marvel superhero kind of reference. Obviously, if you're talking to Marvel superhero people, that's well and good, but largely for awards school, you want to be talking to a broad audience, because that's where the briefs are going to be judged against. It's meant to be instant get, like they shouldn't have to look up anything to get it.
Oh, and just, can we go back to that last slide? I just want to point out something. There were a few briefs that came in that used the prop. Just don't use the prop as a headline. Just come up with something new. It's not a good habit to get into. It's like, maybe in very rare situations, sometimes the prop does become a headline, but it's not a good habit to get into. So too much going on. So these were just examples of ads that were just trying to do too much or over explain or put too much on the page. As you've kind of seen, the ads that are working well are the ones that kind of simplify things and put the bare minimum on there to tell the story in a concise way.
So look, we can go through these pretty quickly, but obviously there's a semblance of an idea there that makes sense. There's a journey to your health, but there's just so much going on. And it's the same again, really.
Yeah, this one. I mean, this one's actually born out of like quite an interesting insight. It's just sort of the execution is, again, it's just too messy. There's too much going on. Find a different way to tell that story that feels more interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the end of the tool time section. So let's do some takeaways. So the checklist, just really quickly, guys, is your ad based on a solid human truth? Is your line concise and interesting? Is your visual arresting, or vice versa? Is the absence of either of these things what makes it interesting? Does the ad communicate the prop clearly, and have you simplified it as much as you can? So just really try and come back to, as you approach your submission, just keep coming back to those points.
And just a couple of quick tips. Say it straight before you say it great. One of the great advertising kind of sayings and tips, and highlight this idea that you don't have to create some award-winning line or headline or thought at the start. You can write something out. It could be a page or something, or just to get your head around what you want to say before you refine it, improve it, and turn it into something great.
Yeah, so rewrite the prop and potential headline or thoughts. That just gets the juices flowing.
A couple of there's a fair few submissions that came in that were like super messy. There was spelling mistakes. There was people had scribbled out headlines and then wrote next to them. When you submit anything to award school, make it as neat as possible. Do your borders. Make sure there's no spelling mistakes. If you make a mistake, I don't know if you can erase it or white out it or draw it again, but just make it as neat as possible when you present it.
And then show your idea to family and friends to see if they get it. It's quite useful. And then ultimately hone it down to perhaps a few people whose opinions you trust, and then generally just stick to them.
And get comfortable with showing and talking about your ideas. You're going to have to do that when you get into advertising, and it's good to get used to doing it early on. And to be honest, it makes your ideas stronger and better. Like most of the times when you talk about ideas, you'll come up with something new or a way you haven't thought of, and just sharing stuff with people broadens your way of thinking into places that, you know, you aren't able to think.
And it's been touched on before, but don't get precious or hung up on your ideas, especially your first one. You might go, oh, I've just cracked it, but reality is there's probably a better one out there, and you've just got to get used to killing your babies, basically. Oh, there you go, someone wrote it, well done.
And then I don't know if this was communicated to you, but in award school, doing your 50 squares per idea is like sort of a generally good approach. It takes time to get to that good idea, and it's just through putting in the work, finding different ways in, and just early on as well, when you're first figuring out how to come up with award like ideas, you just need to put in the hours and do as many as possible. So yeah, do 50 squares per idea.
So final thought, you know, if you're willing to put in the work, accept criticism and feedback and be open-minded, you will succeed, because drive at this stage is the most important thing. You can learn all the other stuff, but if you don't have drive and really want to be here, just believe me, save yourself the trouble, because it is brutal. It's really, really tough. And look, I know John and I went on went on for a bit, but we just want to make sure to try and give everyone who put the effort in to do the practice brief. We really wanted to give you guys as much as you could to take away from it. So I don't know if you want to do any Jerry Springer final thoughts there, John.
No,
I mean, talked enough.
I just saw people asking about, you know, if their ideas went up, but we've only done a selection of ideas just to provide examples of, you know, things to watch out for. There were too many submissions to do, you know, each one exhaustively.
We'll be here all night. We'll be here all night.
Sorry we didn't get to use yours as an example, whoever, you know, got excluded, but yeah, hopefully you got something out of it.
Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate the feedback. And I'm afraid that we can't provide any more feedback on top of what the guys have done tonight. So don't send us an email asking for additional feedback. This was just to demonstrate some ways in which you could have approached this brief. But thank you so much, guys. Great feedback. We really, really appreciate it.
No worries.
So now we're going into our final session, which is session 4, tips, tricks, and ammo. And that's going to be taken by Kieran and Sarah. So thanks very much, guys, and kick it off.
Good one. Well, we're going to start with an idea generation game. It's the 6 circles challenge. You may have done this before, you may not have. The gist here is you draw 6 circles on a page. Can you make something different from each of the circles? So your first thought, for example, might be a basketball. The idea is to try and do something unique and different for each of your circles. So let's give everyone a minute to do that, and then we can put our answers into the chats and see what the same ideas were and what the most unique ideas were. Yet one circle, no, not 6 different colors, 6 different objects or things. You know, one might be a basketball, one might be a face, but you don't want to do those because they're the ones I've just suggested. Okay, so you may have had many other ideas, and I think I've seen lots, you know, like a scope, jack-o'-lantern, pie, Saturn, unicycle, bubble, disco ball, etc., etc. The point of this exercise is that each circle is a way to explore the same idea in different ways, and that's really what you do when you're coming up with an idea. In advertising, you'll have a very tight brief, the circle, and you want to come up with as many different ways in as possible. So yes, do a globe, yes, do the moon, yes, do a basketball, yes, do a pumpkin. But then, you know, maybe you'll join the 2 circles together and you get something more interesting, or something else will grow and spark off that. A fetus curled up is not gross. It's different, it's okay. Lance Armstrong's remaining testicle. So I think that the openness of kind of exploring an idea is what you do when you start off as a creative, and you will get faster and quicker at this. And so you might not be drawing the actual boxes, you'll just have them cycling through in your head when you're coming up with the ideas. And eventually you might just look at a brief and go, oh, that's the answer. And it'll be, again, you'll grow as a creative over time by continually practicing. It's how you build those neurons in your brain to make more connections and to fire faster. And like anything, practice makes you better. So we can go to the next slide, perhaps, now, Ames. There are a lot of ways of coming up with ideas. I think all of us on the panel will have a different way of doing it. I remember when I did award school, the guy said to me, I have to be in a dark room and close my eyes to think of ideas. And everyone has a different approach, in a different way they feel most creative, or a different way of tackling a hard brief. You'll find your own way. Everyone finds their own way eventually, but here are just 5 tips and 5 thought starters to help. So we'll start with this one. Don't tell, show. I feel like it's all about that ha moment where people go, I get what they're saying, and it's clever. We want to persuade people to feel things about a product or cause, and we don't do that by telling them what to think. If you show them what you want to say and let them come to that conclusion on their own, they'll believe it more than when they can draw their own opinion by themselves. So this is really telling people what Lego is so great at. You know, it can be anything your imagination tells you. They don't write that down. They show you, and then they put their logo at the bottom. Super, super simple. We've talked about this a lot. Move past your first thought. I don't think I need to elaborate on this too much. But you'll see, you know, all the little games we've played and all the work that you've seen throughout the application process, that your first thought is not going to always be your best thought. It'll be everyone else's best thought. So try and move past it so you do stand out, because creative directors and agencies are looking for unique thinkers and unique points of view. And the more you take ownership of your unique point of view, the more appealing you'll be to the industry. All right. Gosh, I love this so much still. Good is the enemy of great. You know, on the right-hand side there, that's that lovely old woman in Spain who tried to redo an old artwork, did a terrible job of it. And there's some things we have to say where if we push past okay, we can get to something better. And if we keep pushing past good, we can get to great. So that means, in a lot of ways, means, you know, you can interpret that in a lot of ways too, but it means being able to walk away from an idea that's not on brief and going, okay, that's okay, but it's not great. Or it means moving past something that's crafted in a just okay way and going, I'll redraw that again. It'll take me half an hour, but that's half an hour that's worth it. So if you keep pushing, that's when you will create great. Said this 1,000 times, I'm sure, to everyone, but less is more. What we want to do in advertising, especially at the beginning, you know, your clients might not agree, but at the beginning in that award school, we want to say one thing really well. You want to reduce your ad down to only what's needed to communicate the idea, the headline, the tagline, the key visual, and sometimes even less. Sometimes you don't need a headline like this amazing Mac delivery outdoor that's been done and it won zillions of awards. When you take away unnecessary details and simplify everything down, you'll get your strongest ad. So again, that's that reductionism we keep referring back to. This next one, say it like no one else. And again, I've kind of already touched on this, but this is an industry where being unique is prized. It's what makes you stand out from the pack, get noticed, and get people's attention. So find your unique voice, and also find what's unique about a product or a brand. That it's the, they talk about it as the ownable asset or a unique selling proposition. It's something that no one else can talk about because it's what people remember. So ketchup, they've become, Heinz have become very iconic in the tomato sauce space, and they keep doing things that make them distinctive and build on their ownable assets to become invaluable and identifiable with their brand. All right, here are some very quick thought starters. This first one, exaggerate it. One way into a brief is to exaggerate the benefit. So this ad here does this in a very simple way. it's talking about Zoom. And so they're saying Zoom so good, so powerful that it's like you can see the bird right in front of you. So this key message is something that the audience can take away from the ad, and it's really crystal clear in this exaggeration. Next one, demonstrate it. Another way of communicating the unique selling point or the proposition is to demonstrate what we want to say. Demonstrations can be done in a million different ways, but this Salvos ad is a great example of how you can do it in a fresh way. So, I'm sure we've seen a million ads that say donate your old clothes, but in this instance, they've rephrased it as if it no longer fits, donate it. And they've demonstrated that by showing the marks on clothes that are too tight on someone's skin. It's a much more interesting and eye-catching way to communicate the message to the audience. Metaphorize it. Eggplants mean something different nowadays in the time of this ad. Eggplants didn't mean anything else, but this is a really great example of a metaphor in a visual metaphor in your ad. Purple, so purple, it's like an eggplant. And they did a whole series of these. So for each color, they talked about the true color being like an eggplant, or like a chili, or like a fire truck. Okay, here's where I start to abuse the English language a bit more. Culturify it. So leveraging culture in your idea can help make your message more relevant and more engaging. So Reddit did this really well by equating the lack of votes people, or the election was hinging on a certain amount of votes to change the outcome. And they're talking about people doing more likes on Reddit, and like things like crappy bread and a cat, than voting on something as important as the presidential election. So use culture to make your ad or your idea have context. And this is not 10 years ago, this is only a couple of years ago, but they're talking about the 2000 election. They were talking about the Trump presidency, the recent election. So when you can leverage culture, you'll get people to pay attention to what you're talking about in a different way. And the last one, fuck it, as in don't get caught up in the rules. So there are no rules in advertising, and people you shouldn't have to feel like you have to do certain things. The loose guidelines we've talked through tonight are ways to think about advertising, but breaking the rules is really where you come up with great ideas. And it's how what gets awarded in advertising is stuff that breaks the rules and pushes boundaries. So what you need to really be focusing on now is not getting too caught up in I have to do it this way or I have to do it that way. The point you want to really be focusing on right now is just getting people to pay attention to your ad and like what you're saying or selling, because our job is to make people like and want to buy or pay attention to the thing we're talking about.
Thanks, Sarah. That was great. All right, we're going to have a bit of a Q&A. So just in the box there, the Q&A box, list any questions that you've got. I'm going to just, I'm going to moderate, and I'm going to start with Phoebe. I've got a question for you. And this is kind of from the chat box and what you guys have been writing. Phoebe, how do I tackle a brief if I can't draw?
Great question. I definitely am not a drawer. I never have been. There are a few tricks and a few hacks like to get around that, and don't feel like pressured to just do copy-based executions either. Do try and challenge yourself to try and have a draw, even if it is really bad. I actually found I have an iPad at home. I locked the screen, I turned the brightness up on full on a white background, and I use that to trace a little bit. So don't be afraid to kind of trace a few things if it just can like loosely get across what you're trying to show. Yeah, have a trace. A window during the day is a great option as well. But yeah, don't be afraid to have a draw. Otherwise, try and ask your friend, or if you know someone that can draw, give it to them, exchange, a few beers with them to try and get them to draw for you. But yeah, like try and have a go yourself though. Even if it's a loose scamp, we generally try and get the gist of it when we look at the work too. So don't try and feel lots of pressure either. I know writers feel that heading in award school. So don't be ashamed to have a go at drawing.
Cool. Kieran, I'm going to throw one to you. There's been a few questions about kind of the format of award school, and there's a Monday night lecture, and some of them are pre-recorded, so you watch in your own time at home, and others are in person. But how do the tutes work?
Yeah, so every week on the tute, as long as we can, hopefully be out of lockdown, you'll be able to actually turn up at an agency for, 5 or 6 weeks at a time. You do that twice with 2 different agencies. So you'll rock up at maybe 6:30 or so, and with 5 or 6 other of your fellow award school classmates, and you get to sit down and go through your ideas and get real feedback from your tutors on the spot. And it's a great way to develop like camaraderie with that group of people, and to have some really good conversations about how ideas work and get that real feedback.
Cool. And so with the briefs, you get one a week. Is that how it works? And you present them in the tute? How does the briefs work?
Yeah, you'll get it's one brief a week, and they will slowly build up over time and start add. But it's why you got to have a really good run at it and get everything you can out of each week. It's the only way to keep up with it. It's a very intensive course, but you can get a lot out of it by really applying yourself.
Cool. All right, I'm going to pass one over. Thanks, Kieran. I'm going to pass one over to John now. How do I manage the balance of doing award school while studying or while working? How did you do it when you were doing award school?
Unmute.
Sorry.
I thought I lost you there.
I was wondering why, it wasn't working. But the workload can become quite a bit. And as Kieran was saying, it will build up over time. So I think it's important to sort of say to yourself, over 12 weeks or whatever, you might forgo going out or social situations. Don't go out on Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, or pick maybe at least one day a week where you're going to dedicate that week, that day of the week, to working on a brief, because it's important you don't let one of the briefs slip, because then you'll get another brief the next week. And if you haven't done enough on the first week, then it's going to make it harder to catch up. And the briefs become more and more involved as time goes on. So I just say, be quite dedicated with your time, and be, willing to give up certain things and prioritize for a little bit. So it does seem like a hard thing to do, to give up all that time, but trust me, advertising is worth it. It's one of the most fun jobs that I've ever had. And it's, it's only 12 weeks of your life, and you get to basically like work in a job that doesn't feel like working the rest of the time.
Thanks, John. All right, I've got one for Matt. So John and Steve spoke about the 50 box method. How do you approach creative briefs? How do you move past your first thought? And do you use the 50 box method? And could you explain that to people?
I did. I love the 50 box method when I was doing award school, because I'd never heard of it. And then someone explained that to me. And it's basically, it's pretty simple. You get a page, basically draw 50 boxes, and then you just start writing down any insights, any sort of observations or little truths that you can find around that product. So if it's for toothpaste, for example, you might start by writing, stuff about how people use it, how it's perceived, what it's meant to do, what its history might be, what its value is, what it, what does it bring into your life? And then through that, you basically build up a huge bank of insights to turn into ads. And it's just a really, really good way to sort of force yourself onto the next thought, and not stop on idea number 1, 2, or 3, and then, spend the rest of your evening digging into that. You sort of move past all those first ideas that everyone was, talking about before. And then I think, over time you get better at sort of moving through that process. So now, it's good to just sort of sit down with a pen and paper, have a chat with Phoebe, and we sort of almost do the same thing, but without the sort of structure of 50 boxes, but still the sort of principle of, getting past those early thoughts sticks around.
Cool, thanks. All right, I'm going to ask Steve, how do the briefs work? So do you hand them in each week, or are you building up a portfolio?
Yeah, so as the guys touched on before, as you get a brief, say obviously there's 10 briefs the 10 weeks, I think you get a halftime break and then a break at the end as well, just to get it all together. You get a brief at your first, I think the first lecture that you then look, I can't remember the structure precisely, but basically you'll get a brief each week that you will come up with ideas for and present in your tute the following week. And then at the start of the next week, you get your next brief. And then basically it sort of rolls from there. So it's like a rolling pattern whereby that next week you'll present the ideas for your second brief, and you'll also get your third brief. So then the next week you present your ideas for the third brief, and then you get your fourth brief, and it just ticks on and on and on and on like that. Sometimes, depending on the tute, you might have time to be able to go back and quickly sort of go through some of the stuff. But generally speaking, it moves at a pretty fair clip. So to what John mentioned, it's definitely worth just basically if you guys really want to do it, block out those 12 weeks and just go, I mean, we've been in lockdown now anyway, so everyone's used to doing nothing. So just block it out and say these 12 weeks, I'm just going to dedicate my time to it because it can get away from you. And you see it happen where people it just gets so overwhelming because the briefs are relentless. They just do keep coming. So yeah, stay on top of it.
All right, cool. I'm going to pass it over to Sarah. So Sarah, if I'm a plumber or a chef or working kind of a traditional marketing role, is it worthwhile considering doing award school?
The old mute button. I think it depends on whether you want to stay in your job or not, and what you want to do. I feel like commercial creativity is the difference wanted and needed in a lot of careers. So being able to think creatively, whether you end up becoming an advertising creative, whether you become a PR person, a window dresser, a sculptor, a musician, coming up with creative ideas and responding to a brief, that's a skill that's going to give you a lot of legs in your chosen career, whatever you choose to do. But certainly if you want to be in advertising, you want to be a creative, award school is the best way in.
Okay, cool. Phoebe, can you help us with any books we should be reading, anything we should be looking at, any kind of creative inspiration?
Oh, good question. I mean, it's everywhere, in the world. I think in one of the earlier lectures, your tutors kind of tell you to start taking a step back and looking at people, whether that's, on the train or out there in the world. You will get briefs as well for different audiences. So you might be selling nappies to mums, or, you might be selling video games to teens. So try and immerse yourself in as many different kinds of worlds as possible, and really kind of go beyond your kind of initial comfort zone from what you normally read and consume in media. Heading to like kind of, some ad news sites, like Campaign Brief or Ad News, where you can kind of look up some recent campaigns. Even if you Google Cannes Lions and like print, you can look at some of the world's best kind of ads too, if you just want some inspiration. But I'd stick to like kind of Reddit and jump on socials, TikTok, try and go beyond just your algorithm and look at different things, just to try and absorb as many things as possible. And ask your classmates too what they like. They ask your tutors what they read and what they enjoy, because the more, I guess, diverse stuff you consume, the more interesting your ideas can potentially come from.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Phoebe. I'm just going to run through some sort of questions that I can answer. You can only apply for the online program or the in-person program in your state. So if you live remotely and you apply for the online program, all your tutorials will be online. So if you can get to a capital city and you can attend the tutes, by all means apply for the in-person course, but it's completely up to you. We've had lots of instances where I know in Victoria this year we had a guy from Ballarat and a guy from Shepparton, and they both did really well, and they stayed the night in Melbourne, and they did the course. Kristen has asked, what's the ratio of individual to team tasks and work on the course? This is an individual program. And at graduation night, which Matt talks very fondly about, we list the top 10 students and the top 3. And so that's 1, 2, 3. So it's all individual, and it's in and then they go into a national pool. So there's a national top student as well, which Victoria took out the national top student with Matthew Chen this year. In terms of cost and payment plans, all of that's on our website. We do not do payment plans, but you can see all the details of cost on our website, awardonline.com, and there's a lot of information there. You can also send me an email, amy@adcouncil.org.au. If you would like some practice briefs to try, please send me an email. My email, amy@adcouncil.org.au, and I can send you some practice briefs that you can have a go at. And, speak to people about these briefs, show your work to people. And I think we've all kind of touched on it, that getting feedback is really important. I'm just going to reach out to the group. Kieran and Sarah, would you like to make any other comments?
It's a fantastic career to get into, and this is a brilliant opportunity to push your ideas and see what you can do with your thinking and your unique way of seeing the world. So if this is something that you'd be really inspired by, then give it everything, give it a crack and see where you go.
Sarah, is there anything you'd like to add?
I'm just looking at some of the Q&A questions. Someone was talking about, if you currently work in advertising, is award school beneficial? I started award school when I got my foot in the door starting as a junior or in the studio. So I taught myself Adobe Suite and got myself a job in the studio, even though I was not a graphic designer. I'd studied completely different things. I wrangled my way into becoming an art director, junior art director. And I was given, my boss at the time, she said to me, why don't you do award school and we'll pay for half of it if you complete it. And that's why I did award school, because it was her suggestion. And it was the best thing I did, because it really sharpened my thinking about what an ad should do and look like and be like, to be the clearest and simplest and most creative execution. And had I not gone through that process of award school, which was difficult because it was 12 weeks and I wanted to go out and do other things, but I had to put time aside, and I was working full time, and I had to put time aside every night or elsewhere to get the work done. But it was paid off, a million times over. And I met fantastic people. I developed great networks. So it's a great way to try and get a job as well. If you want to meet people, you might meet a creative partner there. And at the end, you'll have a portfolio of work that will allow you to talk to creative directors and get your foot in the door and show people what your mind is like. And that will be the thing that gets you a job. So that's that whole, I just answered that entire question in a very long way, but that was one of the Q&A questions there. And I highly recommend award school as the best way to get your foot in the door.
Great, thanks, Sarah. We've got quite a few questions about the application numbers. So nationally, across our states and our online program, we get applications of between 400 and 500, and we accept 200. So really, working on your application is really important. And we also suggest, showing your work outside. So, feel free to read campaign brief and contact creatives that you like, or contact agencies that you like, and speak to people, because it's great to get feedback, as I've said. All right, well, we're going to finish up now. Thank you all very much for your time tonight. We've just put on the screen here key dates again. We have all your contact details. We'll be sending you an email with a recording of tonight, so feel free to watch it again, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Hit up these guys on LinkedIn as well, and you can also contact me and my email address if you've got any questions or want any briefs. I just want to say a big thank you to all the speakers tonight. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate all your feedback and your presentation tonight. Thank you. And that's it from us. Bye, everyone.